and gentlemen. I'm here to talk about human wild animal conflict resolution. But let me introduce myself. I'm a judge, and so I guess that makes conflict resolution a speciality of mine. In our country, when you talk about conflict resolution, the image that normally comes to your mind would be something like this, right? But suppose I were to now change the narrative a bit and tell you that one of the parties to this conflict is an animal. This time around, the image that conjures up in your mind is certainly not going to be that, right? And why is that? There are certain features of our laws that are unique. The first being that it is what we call, when it comes to laws governing the ecology and environment, our laws are notoriously anthropocentric. And what do you mean by anthropocentric? Anthropocentric is when the laws subordinate the interests of other species to those of human interests. The other, if I were to draw an analogy with what Abraham Lincoln famously said about democracy, it's a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Our laws are in the same mold. When it comes to environmental laws, they're made by humans, for humans, and they're designed to regulate the lives of humans in society. There are other features of our laws. The second, as you see there, is it's rights-based. Now, what do you mean by rights-based? A rights-based is because the conflict situation is often resolved by looking at which of the rights of the conflicting parties has to prevail. And lastly, you require a forum before which you need to go to establish those rights. Now, you can imagine why our laws are so grossly unfair to the animal species. They're loaded against it, they are anthropocentric, it's unfair to the animals, and most importantly, no animal is going to come to an adjudicatory forum. I've been a judge 10 years, this doesn't happen in my court. Right? So, what is it that ails the system? According to me, let me give you an example. When we have a real life situation, and I'm going to take you to a district in Kerala called Idukki. All of you know Idukki. It's been in the news of late because there are increasing instances of human-wildlife conflict happening in Idukki. Now, Idukki, the colourful portion there, is on the boundary between Kerala and Tamil Nadu. And at the boundary, you find reserve forests which belong to the Western Ghats. Now, you have a lot of wild elephants who foray into the Idukki district and the human settlements in Idukki and cause widespread damage to crop and homestead. Now, when you're trying to resolve a conflict using a rights-based system, this is what happens. You first examine the evidence of damage to the crops and homesteads, and this time it's solely with a view to assess the quantum of damages. In other words, you're trying to figure out how much of loss has been caused to the human habitation. You then go on to hear the version of the human settlers, the farmer, whose home has been destroyed or whose crop has been destroyed, and you're doing that only for the purposes of determining whether that farmer has got a right to claim those damages. Notice that in this whole process, the animal is never heard, right? You then move on to try and redress that human grievance. You're doing it partly through compensating the human farmer for his, through money or taking out an insurance for him, and also partly the retribution that we seek. So you're trying to capture the animal and hold it in captivity. Now, this is where it sometimes goes into very hilarious situations. Why hilarious? human laws make enforcement action difficult for the enforcing agencies because we have something called jurisdiction. And what this means is that suppose you have a forest official trying to pursue an animal to capture it. The animal goes into the forest official follows the animal, goes into the forest for some time, and then the animal crosses over to Tamil Nadu. I have known forest officials who have told me that they literally see the elephant cross the border, turn around and look at them as though to mock them. And this man can do nothing. So he turns back from the border and the animal, the wild elephant goes into Tamil Nadu. And it's not as though Tamil Nadu does not have its share of forest officials. But then there's another catch. The forest official in Tamil Nadu does not need to catch the animal because it hasn't caused any damage in Tamil Nadu, right? So the elephant goes scot-free. Now the big question is, has there been an effective resolution? The answer is an emphatic no, because there is of course the damage paid to the farmer, but the elephant has not been caught, and there's absolutely no guarantee that this conflict situation may not arise again. So with these inherent limitations in a rights-based system, what options do we have? Can we think differently? I would think that the main problem when it comes to environmental laws is that we're speaking a totally different language. What if we change our language? What if we converse in the language of duties rather than rights? A duties-based conversation, a duties-based legal system is not something that is alien to our culture as Indians. If you go back in time to the ancient Indian legal system, our whole society was founded on the concept of dharma. And dharma, loosely translated, means duty. In a sense, what was adhered to in society was a code of conduct. It was a code of virtuous conduct on the part of the citizens. They cared for each other. They felt that they owed something to the society. And it is, when you think of it, it's not very different from some of the similar philosophies available worldwide. For example, you find the Ubuntu philosophy, which informs the Bantu people of South Africa. It's basically a triumph of collectivism over individualism, if you will. It's the philosophy of, I am because we are. And it's not something, as I said, it's not something that is new to the Indian psyche. If you look at our constitution, we have a chapter on fundamental duties. The chapter on fundamental duties is in part 4A of our constitution. And there's an interesting aside to that. When we adopted our constitution in 1950, one would have imagined that for a country whose ancient legal system was founded on dharma, we would have a chapter on fundamental duties as well. No, we didn't. In 1950, we had only a chapter on fundamental rights. Maybe the framers of our constitution thought that we don't need a chapter on fundamental duties because it's so ingrained in our collective psyche. But no, in 1974, we amended our constitution to bring in that chapter on fundamental duties. So now we have a chapter on fundamental duties, and one of the fundamental duties of every citizen is to take care of our environment, our forests, and most importantly, show compassion to animals. Now, how do we use this system or this duty-based system to resolve a conflict? Let's go back to our wild elephant in Idiki. And this time around, let's look at the duty-based approach. Now, you're examining the evidence of damage to crop and homesteads, not for determining the quantum of damages, but to understand the reasons for the animal's behavior. The animal doesn't need to be heard in that process because it's you who's trying to understand the other. You hear the version of the human settlers, only to determine whether it was their actions that was responsible for the animal's behavior. So your focus is entirely on self-regulation so as to benefit the other. Maybe the animal was attracted by what you're cultivating on this side of the forest. If you cultivate bananas, if you cultivate jackfruits on the fringes of a forest, you will have uninvited guests. Redressal of human grievances is partly through monetary compensation for the damage and partly not by proceeding against the animal but through restrictions imposed on their cultivation rights so that further damage is mitigated. So you're restricting human action, you're taking steps on your own. And lastly, if you ask yourself the question, is there an effective resolution? The answer will be an emphatic yes this time, because you've understood the animal, you've taken corrective measures on your end, and you ensure that the animal does not come back again, because it doesn't have any reason to do so. In the ultimate analysis, this is basically the difference between the duty-based and the rights-based. In the rights-based, you're more egoistic. You're asking the question as to what do I get from society. If you repeat that question for 50 years, 75 years, what it means is that you become a very selfish society. Let's think of duty-based systems. You're asking a different question. You're asking, what can I do for society? What can I do that will benefit the other, my fellow citizen or the animal? And you have an ecocentric, a truly ecocentric, egalitarian society. And that, in the years of my judgeship and the number of cases that I have heard, I do believe that at least in environmental matters and ecology matters, this is an idea that is worth exploring. Thank you.